I used to believe there was nothing worse than growing old alone. I was wrong. There is something worse. Standing in my living room, holding my son's blood-stained wallet, while an officer tells me he didn't make it. That moment split my life into two halves, before the phone call and everything after. The afternoon sun had barely faded when the police knocked on my door. I still remember the sound, sharp, hollow, like someone hitting the side of an empty steel drum. I opened the door thinking it was a delivery. Instead, I saw two officers and a folded blanket in one of their hands. "Ma'am, your son Daniel, there was a highway collision. He was transported to UCLA Medical Center. They tried." The officer paused, his voice almost trembling. "I'm so sorry." My knees buckled. I didn't fall completely, but the world tilted sideways, and for a second, I swear the entire room lost its color. They handed me Daniel's wallet, his Rolex, scratched but intact, and the keys to his car. Objects from a life that ended too suddenly to understand. The next days blurred. Funeral arrangements, condolences, flowers lining my porch, neighbors stopping by with casseroles I never touched. And then came the silence. The kind that settles into the cracks of your house and waits for you in every room. 100 days later, I hosted a small memorial at home. Just family and a few friends. The house felt heavy, like even the walls remembered him. On the mantel, next to the lit candle, sat Daniel's framed portrait from his last family Christmas. Warm smile, clean suit, Liam sitting on his lap. Every time I looked at it, my chest tightened. Olivia arrived late. She used to rush through the door laughing, her hair blown by the California wind, Daniel behind her holding little Liam. But today she walked in stiffly, sunglasses on though it was cloudy, her lips too red, her heels too high for a memorial. "Mom," she said softly, kissing my cheek. Her perfume was expensive, Dior I think, and almost too strong in a room filled with burning candles. Liam ran to me, hugging my waist. "Grandma, can I stay tonight?" That simple question almost made me burst into tears. During the gathering, I noticed something unusual. Olivia wasn't mingling with anyone. She kept drifting toward Daniel's old office, glancing inside like she was searching for something. Her eyes weren't grieving, her eyes were calculating. After everyone left, she stepped toward me with a polite smile plastered on her face. "Mom, about Daniel's financial accounts, did he ever tell you where he kept important documents? Mortgage papers, investment records, anything like that?" I froze. It wasn't grief talking, it was something colder. I brushed it off with a vague, "Everything's still where he left it." But after she left, I walked into Daniel's office. His MacBook Air sat closed on the desk, a thin layer of dust on the screen. His old leather-bound planner rested beside it. And then, the safe. The safe built into the wall, one he'd installed just 6 months before the accident. My hands shook as I typed the code he told me once, half-jokingly, Liam's birthday. The door clicked open. Inside were folders, envelopes, a USB drive, and a sealed letter with my name on it. My heart slammed in my chest. I opened the letter with trembling fingers. "Mom, if anything ever happens to me, please protect whatever is inside this safe until Liam is old enough. There are things Olivia doesn't know about yet. Don't rush to trust anyone." My breath caught. Tears blurred my vision. Behind me, through the half-closed door, I saw a shadow shift. Someone had been watching. I turned my head in time to catch a pair of familiar eyes, Olivia's, before she quickly disappeared down the hallway. And for the first time since Daniel died, a new kind of fear crept into my heart. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dim glow of the hallway nightlight, my heart racing with the memory of Olivia's shadow lingering at the door. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her standing there, silently watching me open the safe, watching the one thing Daniel asked me to protect. By morning, the house felt colder than usual. The air smelled faintly of burnt candle wax from the memorial. I walked into the kitchen, made myself tea, and sat by the window, staring at the lemon tree Daniel planted when Liam was born. Then, exactly at 8:03 a.m., my doorbell rang. I opened the door expecting the mailman. Instead, it was Olivia, holding 2 Starbucks drinks and wearing a smile so bright it almost felt artificial. "Good morning, Mom. I brought you a caramel macchiato. I remember you liked those." I blinked, stunned. She'd never once brought me coffee in the 7 years she'd been married to my son. I took the cup slowly. "Thank you. That's thoughtful." She brushed past me into the house, humming softly, as if last night's eerie moment had never happened. Liam followed behind her, clutching his backpack. "We're just stopping by before school," she said, placing her purse on the counter. "I wanted to check on you." Her voice was syrupy, too sweet, too smooth. I studied her carefully as she talked, the way her eyes wandered toward Daniel's office, the way she kept her iPhone in her hand, screen lit, as if she was waiting for a message she didn't want me to see. "Mom," she said after a moment, "do you know if Daniel kept any financial statements? Or maybe a list of accounts?" She flipped her hair casually, pretending to sound offhand. "I figured he might have shared things with you." There it was again, that same sharp shift in her tone, like a knife sliding just beneath velvet. I chose my words carefully. "Everything Daniel left behind is still where it was." She nodded slowly, as if hearing something between the lines. Liam stood beside me, tugging my sleeve. "Grandma, can I show you my new drawing?" I knelt and smiled at him, grateful for the interruption. "Of course." As we stepped away, I felt Olivia's gaze burning into my back, silent, evaluating, waiting. After dropping Liam off at school, Olivia came back. That alone was unusual. Normally she'd rush off to work or errands, but today she lingered, browsing shelves, opening and closing drawers under the pretense of looking for a pen or some paper. At one point she stopped in the hallway, staring at a family photo, Daniel holding toddler Liam, Olivia smiling beside them. "You know," she said softly, "Daniel always handled everything. Bills, taxes, insurance. I never really learned how to manage it all." Her voice cracked just slightly. "Things are tight, Mom, and I just want what's best for my son." It almost sounded sincere, almost. But then she added, "We'd be so much better off if we streamlined things, maybe sold this house, downsize, do something reasonable." I stiffened. "This house was Daniel's gift," I said, "and he wanted it protected." She didn't argue, she just gave me that smile again, thin, polite, unreadable. "I get it. I do," she whispered, "but life changes, and we have to change with it." She left soon after, but the scent of her perfume stayed long after the door closed. By early afternoon, I found myself wandering back into Daniel's office. The safe door was still open from the night before. Papers, envelopes, and that letter with my name on it sat untouched. A thought crawled into my mind, cold and terrifying. If Olivia had seen even a glimpse of what was inside, if she suspected anything, if she believed I knew more than I was saying, what would she do next? As I reached down to close the safe, something caught my eye on the carpet. A long blonde hair, Olivia's, right in front of the safe. It hadn't been there last night. My stomach turned. She had been inside this room, and much closer than I ever imagined. The morning after finding that blonde hair on the carpet, I paced around the living room like a woman searching for air holes in a sinking ship. I kept replaying the image in my mind, Olivia leaning near the safe, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. I needed to breathe. I needed someone who didn't tiptoe around me with polite grief or false sweetness. So I stepped outside, wrapped in my old knit cardigan, planning only to water the lemon tree. But before I reached the hose, I heard the familiar creak of the gate next door. George. His white hair was combed neatly as always, his gardening gloves tucked in one back pocket, and his expression softened the moment he saw me. "Mornin', Margaret," he said gently. "You look like you've been wrestling ghosts." "Maybe I have," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "Well, my porch is open, the coffee's hot, and I just baked blueberry muffins. Don't ask how they taste. The smoke alarm didn't go off this time, so that's promising." That small joke, simple, silly, broke something heavy inside me, and before I could stop myself, I nodded. George's house was cozy in a way that made mine feel like a museum. Photos lined his walls, his late wife, their kids, a fishing trip from decades ago. He poured coffee into mismatched mugs and set a plate of muffins on the table. "All right," he said, easing into a chair opposite me. "Start talking. Your face says you're about 5 minutes from burying a body." I let out a shaky laugh. "You're not far off." I told him everything. The memorial, Olivia's sudden sweetness, her questions, the safe, Daniel's letter, the blonde hair. George didn't interrupt. He didn't gasp or jump to conclusions. He just listened. Eyes sharp, jaw set, the way I imagined he must have looked in court back in his law days. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "Do you trust her?" he asked. "No," I said instantly. Then softer. "But she's the mother of my grandson." That doesn't make her harmless. I stared into my coffee. I feel like I'm lying just by existing next to her. You're not lying, he replied. You're protecting what Daniel asked you to protect. I hesitated, but I hid some of the assets, George. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. I don't even know if Daniel wanted me to hide all of it. And now it feels like something's spiraling beyond my control. He leaned back. You didn't hide them out of greed. You hid them out of fear. Fear makes people do clumsy things, doesn't make them wrong things. His words stung, but also soothed. Before I could respond, a loud chime came from the counter. George's iPad lit up with a notification. He reached for it but froze halfway. That's strange, he mumbled. Security camera alert. Camera, I asked. I installed one by the hedge last month facing our driveways. Rabbits kept eating my tomatoes. Thought I'd catch the little thieves. He tapped the screen. The video preview showed footage from the previous night. I leaned closer. There was my driveway, my walkway, my front door, and Olivia. She wasn't just standing there. She was kneeling, pressing her face close to the side window of Daniel's office, cupping her hands around her eyes to look in. My breath hitched. George expanded the video. We watched in silence. Olivia checking the window, trying the handle, locked. Checking her phone, stepping back, then returning again, this time leaning closer, her expression sharp and anxious, like she was searching for something, or confirming something. I swallowed hard. George, why would she do that? He didn't blink. Because she's looking for whatever you found. A cold shiver crawled down my neck. If she was willing to snoop around my house in the middle of the night, what would she do next? The muffins sat untouched between us. And for the first time since Daniel died, I wasn't just grieving, I was afraid. I didn't go home right away. Even after watching that security footage, Olivia crouched by my window like a person hunting through shadows. I stayed in George's kitchen, gripping my mug so tightly the ceramic warmed my palms. My mind kept circling the same questions. What was she looking for? How much did she see? How far would she go? Margaret, George said softly, you need to be careful from now on, and you need to start documenting everything. Documenting? I breathed. She's my daughter-in-law. And my mother-in-law was an angel, he replied dryly. Doesn't mean she didn't steal my good bourbon when she visited. The little joke cracked the tension, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Still, when I finally walked back to my house, the driveway felt different. Every window looked like an eye. Every shadow felt too still. Inside, I went straight to Daniel's office. The safe was shut tight. I checked the USB, the folders, the letter, all untouched, but the room smelled faintly of Olivia's perfume. She had definitely been here. Around noon, my doorbell rang again. For a second, my heart jumped, thinking it was Olivia returning. But when I cracked the door open, I saw a delivery driver placing a brown Amazon box on my porch. Inside was a small digital lockbox, one I didn't remember ordering. Then I saw the note tucked underneath. In case you need extra protection, G. I exhaled shakily. George, his timing felt heaven-sent. I placed the lockbox inside my bedroom closet, sliding it behind a stack of old quilts. If Olivia wanted to snoop, she'd have to dig deep enough to discover how bad her manicure could get. Later that afternoon, Olivia texted, Mom, can we stop by this evening? Liam drew a picture for you. If it had been just Liam, I would have said yes with no hesitation. But the thought of her in my house again made my stomach twist. Still, refusing would raise suspicion. So I answered, yes, around 6 is fine. At exactly 6:02 p.m., her white Tesla rolled into my driveway, the headlights sweeping across the windows like a spotlight searching for an escaped prisoner. Olivia stepped out first, smiling like the morning sunshine. Liam bounded out behind her, waving his drawing wildly. Grandma, look, I drew you and Daddy and me at the beach. The picture made my heart collapse in a way neither fear nor grief ever could. I hugged him tight, burying my face in his hair. But when I glanced up, Olivia's eyes were already drifting toward Daniel's office again. I was thinking, she said lightly, maybe we should start sorting Daniel's belongings soon. For Liam's sake, you know? Closure. Closure. A pretty word for control. I kept my tone even. I'm not ready yet. She pressed her lips together in a sympathetic pout. I understand, but the mortgage is still in Daniel's name. If we're not careful, things could get complicated. Financially, I mean. There it was, no longer sweet, no longer subtle. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were sharp, hungry. "Olivia," I said, "I know things are tight for you, but let's slow down." She laughed softly. "Tight? Mom, I'm drowning. Therapy bills, after-school programs, insurance premiums. Do you know how expensive it is raising a child in California?" The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment I saw not a scheming woman, but a young mother exhausted by life. Then she lowered her voice, and the softness turned to pressure. "If Daniel left anything behind, anything at all, I need to know. Or Liam." A quiet, uncomfortable silence settled between us. Liam tugged my hand. "Grandma, can I go play in your room?" "Yes, sweetheart." As he ran off, Olivia moved closer, lowering her voice even more. "Just tell me the truth," she whispered. "You were in his office last night? I saw the light on. I know you opened something." My blood turned cold. "You what?" I whispered. Her eyes didn't blink. "Mom," she said gently, "I'm not your enemy." But the way she looked at me, it felt like she was declaring war. After Olivia left that evening, the house felt strangely hollow, like she had taken some of the air with her. Even Liam's laughter echoing down the hallway couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. When their Tesla finally pulled out of the driveway, the taillights flashing one last time, I stood at the window for several seconds, waiting, listening, making sure she wasn't coming back to circle the house again like she had the night before. Only when silence settled did I finally allow myself to exhale. I walked toward Daniel's office. My legs felt heavy. Not from age, from fear. The safe sat behind the half-closed door, its metal surface catching the faint yellow glow from the hallway light. I opened it slowly, half expecting something to be missing. Even though I'd locked it myself, everything was where it should be. The USB, the bank folders, Daniel's letter. But something felt off. A breeze, maybe? A scent. Something subtle enough to unsettle me. Then I realized what it was. One of the envelopes had shifted, leaning slightly forward as if someone had brushed it. I had shut that safe precisely. I remember aligning everything. Because grief had made me obsessive about order. Now that order was broken. My pulse picked up. I closed the safe quickly and straightened up just as the doorbell rang again. My heart nearly shot out of my chest. But the person at the door wasn't Olivia. It was George, holding 2 hot drinks and looking slightly frazzled. "I figured you didn't eat dinner," he said, lifting the Starbucks cups. "And I made soup, the good one. Well, edible one." Despite everything, I smiled. "What are you doing checking on me this late?" "You didn't answer my text earlier," he replied. "And you always answer." He had a point. He knew my habits better than I realized. Inside, he placed the soup on the counter and glanced around. "She was here, wasn't she?" I nodded. His jaw tightened. "Margaret, this isn't normal behavior." "I know," I whispered, "but she's desperate, and I'm hiding something. That makes me." I took a shaky breath, unable to finish. He stepped closer. "No, that makes you someone who's protecting her grandson. Don't twist that into guilt." That was the thing about George. He spoke in a way that made even my worst doubts feel less monstrous. "I need to show you something," I told him. We walked to Daniel's office. George stopped in the doorway, scanning the room as though he'd been preparing for this moment all morning. I opened the safe. He whistled under his breath. Daniel was organized. "Yes," I said, and scared. I just didn't know it. I handed him the leather-bound planner. He opened it gently, flipping through Daniel's neat handwriting. Appointments, deadlines, a page with a smudged note, finalize revision with attorney. Then he turned another page and paused. "What's that?" he asked. Tucked between the line pages was something I had missed earlier, a folded sheet of paper, thin and worn like it had been handled more than once. My breath caught. I hadn't seen this before. I unfolded it carefully. At the top was a printed letterhead from a small law office in Santa Monica. Beneath it, Daniel Harrison, estate update meeting confirmation. The date was 3 weeks before his accident, and attached to it was a handwritten note in Daniel's handwriting. "Mom, if I don't get to finish this, everything I said stands. Protect Liam above all else, especially if Olivia isn't stable." My blood ran cold. George leaned over my shoulder. "He wrote that?" "Yes," I breathed. "And he didn't just mean financially." I ran my thumb over the word stable, its ink pressed deep as if Daniel was emphasizing it hard enough to leave a warning across time. George's voice turned quiet. "Margaret, we need to ask, what did Daniel know about her?" The room fell silent. The air thickened. And suddenly, every look Olivia had given me, every question, every late-night visit, every shift in her eyes, none of it felt random anymore. It felt like the beginning of something Daniel had tried to warn me about, something I was only just starting to understand. I barely slept after finding Daniel's hidden note. The words, "especially if Olivia isn't stable," looped through my mind like a skipping record. I kept picturing my son, alive, burdened, trying to put his affairs in order while living in a house full of secrets I hadn't known existed. By sunrise, my hands were trembling. I made tea, though the cup clattered lightly against the saucer as I carried it to the living room. Outside, the sun rose over the California rooftops, turning everything a soft gold. Beautiful, quiet, deceptive. My phone buzzed. It was Olivia. "Can we talk this morning?" "Important." My stomach tightened. I typed back slowly. "Around 10. Then I sat at the dining table, staring at Daniel's MacBook Air. I'd never opened it, not once since the accident. My grief had wrapped it in invisible barbed wire. But now, something told me I needed to see what he left behind. I pressed the power button. The login screen appeared. Password hint. "Same as always, Mom." I almost laughed. Daniel had used that same password since high school. After 2 attempts, I got it. And suddenly, his world appeared. Photos, financial documents, emails. George, who had come over early, claiming my driveway looked suspiciously quiet, stood behind me. "You okay to look through all this?" he asked. "No," I admitted, "but I have to." I clicked on Daniel's email app. There were folders, one labeled Attorney, another Liam, and a third labeled simply Concerns. My pulse quickened. Inside were saved drafts, unsent messages, notes Daniel wrote to himself. One of them froze my breath. Olivia's spending out of control again, withdrawals without explanation, confronted her. She denied, considering legal options. George let out a slow whistle. "Well, that adds a whole new layer." Another draft read, "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Stress driving late, emotional arguments, she's unstable, need to protect Liam and Mom." My heart slammed against my ribs. "George, what does he mean? It won't be an accident?" He frowned deeply. "You shouldn't jump to conclusions." But Daniel clearly felt unsafe. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Then came the loud knock on the door. I flinched so violently that Plage placed hand on my shoulder. "I'll get it." He opened the door only a crack. Olivia stood there, hair perfect, lipstick flawless, expression composed but eyes bright like someone running on too much adrenaline. She held a folder in her hand. "Good morning, George," she said sweetly. "Is Margaret awake?" I stepped into view. "I'm here." She lifted the folder. "I need to discuss Daniel's accounts. Some of the mail forwarded to my new address mentioned overdue statements." George's gaze sharpened. Funny timing. Olivia ignored him. I forced myself to keep my tone steady. "Come in." As she entered, her eyes immediately flicked toward Daniel's office, then to the dining table where the MacBook Air sat open. Her smile tightened. "You're going through Daniel's files?" "Yes," I said. "I am." Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe. Or anger. Or both. She set the folder down carefully. "I hope you understand I have a right to know what's going on. I'm not the villain here, Margaret." George coughed loudly, muttering, "Debatable." I shot him a look. Olivia opened the folder. Inside were printed spreadsheets, bank notices, and a financial advisor's card. "I've been trying to organize everything," she said. "But I need your cooperation. This house is too expensive to maintain on my own. Selling it would solve a lot." My chest tightened. "I'm not selling Daniel's house." She exhaled sharply. "Then what do you suggest? Magic?" Before I could answer, Liam's voice echoed from outside the door. "Mom? Grandma?" He ran in, holding his backpack and a crushed granola bar, face smeared with crumbs. George whispered to him, "You've got a little, Liam wiped his face with his sleeve, leaving an even bigger smear. Olivia groaned. "Oh my God, Liam." The mood shifted, awkward, almost funny, but only for a breath. Because then Olivia turned back to me. Her eyes hardened. "Margaret," she said slowly, "I know Daniel kept things from me, but I'm done being shut out. I want transparency, and if I don't get it—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Her silence was loud enough to shatter the room. After Olivia's threat hung in the air, Liam sensed the tension and scooted closer to me, clutching his granola bar like a shield. George guided him gently to the living room to watch cartoons on my old TV, giving us space, though he kept the door half open like a silent witness. "Margaret?" Olivia said, lowering her voice. "I'm not trying to fight you, but I can't keep living in chaos. I need stability. Liam needs stability." Her hands trembled slightly when she said that. It wasn't dramatic, it was human. Real. And that scared me more than anything, because people who are breaking can still be dangerous. I took a slow breath. "Sit down, Olivia." She hesitated, but eventually sat at the dining table, her perfectly manicured hands folded tightly in front of her, knuckles whitening. "Tell me," I said quietly, "what's really going on?" She swallowed hard. "I already told you I'm drowning. That's not the whole story." Her jaw tensed. "You think I'm hiding something?" I held her gaze. "I think Daniel was hiding something from me and from you." Her expression flickered, first confusion, then alarm. "What are you talking about?" I slid Daniel's planner across the table, stopping just short of her hands. Not the letter, not the most damning evidence. Just the page mentioning he'd met with an attorney to update his estate. She stared at it for a full 10 seconds before whispering, "He never told me he was revising anything." "Did he tell you everything?" Something inside her broke. Her breath hitched and she leaned back, rubbing her forehead. "No," she said quietly, "he didn't." For a moment, she wasn't calculating or manipulative. She was a widow, frustrated, grieving, overwhelmed. "Daniel started pulling away from me months before the accident," she whispered. "He worked late. He slept on the couch sometimes. He kept saying he was stressed, but he wouldn't say why." "That doesn't mean—" "I know what you're thinking," she snapped, eyes glistening. "You think I'm unstable. You think I pressured him. But he wasn't perfect, Margaret. He shut me out." I folded my hands. "So you pushed harder." Her face crumpled, not in guilt but exhaustion. "I was scared," she whispered. "We had bills. Liam was starting therapy. And Daniel, he was spending money without explaining. Investments, withdrawals, secret accounts linked to his work. When I asked, he said it was handled. But it wasn't." My heartbeat stumbled. This was the other half of the story, the part Daniel never put in writing. She continued, voice cracking. "I loved your son. I loved him. But he made me feel like the enemy, like I was the problem, and the more he shut me out, the more I panicked. I said things I regret. I acted like a fool. But I was terrified of losing the life we built." For a moment, I saw her differently, not as a threat, but as someone drowning. But then she looked at me with those sharp, desperate eyes. "So yes," she said bitterly, "I've been looking for answers. I thought maybe he told you things he never told me. I thought maybe you had control of something he hid." Her voice softened, too soft. "And I need to know, for Liam. I can't raise him in uncertainty." I closed the planner and slid it back to me. "You should have come to me honestly," she laughed, short, humorless. "Would you have believed me?" Before I could answer, a loud clatter came from the living room. We rushed in to find George on the floor, tangled in a blanket Liam had tossed aside while climbing onto the couch. My Kindle lay nearby, screen flickering. "I swear your grandson launched an ambush," George groaned as Liam giggled uncontrollably. Olivia rolled her eyes, muttering, "Oh, for God's sake." But in that moment, a small, unexpected moment, the heaviness in the room loosened just enough for us to breathe. Then Olivia turned to me. Her face went still. "Margaret, we're running out of time. The overdue notices are getting worse. If Daniel left something behind and you're not telling me," her voice lowered, "I will find out, with or without your help." The temporary softness vanished. The desperation remained. And suddenly, Daniel's warning echoed louder than ever. Protect Liam above all else. Olivia's threat hung in the air long after she left. Once her Tesla disappeared down the street, George locked the door behind her with exaggerated caution, clicking it twice just to make me smile. "Think she heard that?" he asked. "George," I sighed, rubbing my temples, "this isn't funny." "No, it's not," he agreed, "but fear eats faster than grief. You need to stay ahead of her." And staying ahead meant one thing. I had to protect Daniel's assets legally, not just emotionally. The next morning, I drove to the small law office in Santa Monica, the same one Daniel had contacted before he died. The building was modest but elegant, with a row of Mercedes parked outside, their silver bodies shining under the California sun. Inside, the receptionist recognized Daniel's name immediately. "Oh, you must be his mother." Her voice softened. "His attorney will see you right away." I followed her into a warm office lined with bookshelves and framed certificates. A thin man with salt and pepper hair stood to greet me. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm deeply sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I murmured. "I wish I were here for something less painful." He gestured for me to sit. "Your son was revising his estate plan. He was very concerned about ensuring stability for you and his child. There were complications." Complications? The word tightened my chest. He tapped his keyboard and turned the monitor slightly so I could see. "Your son documented concerns about joint accounts, withdrawals that didn't align with his records." My stomach dropped. I knew what that meant. Olivia's panic, her desperation. "Mrs. Harrison," he continued gently, "Daniel requested that, in the event he passed before the update was finalized, you and his son be legally protected from any financial misconduct involving those accounts." My breath caught. So there was misconduct? He didn't answer directly, but his silence spoke loudly. He slid a folder toward me. Inside was a draft trust agreement naming me temporary trustee for Liam until he turned 18. Next to it, a permission form authorizing me to move assets for safekeeping if necessary. Daniel had prepared everything. He just hadn't lived long enough to sign it. I felt tears sting my eyes. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "You finalize what your son started," the attorney said, "before anyone else attempts to interfere." When I returned home, George was waiting on my porch with 2 sandwiches and a look of forced optimism. "You were gone longer than planned," he said. "Please tell me you didn't get arrested." I smacked his arm lightly. "I met with Daniel's attorney." "And?" I held up the folder. "It's time to protect Liam, legally." He nodded. "About time." We spent the next hour sorting Daniel's documents, preparing what needed to be moved into the trust. I accessed Daniel's bank app using the password he'd left me, double-checking balances. That's when I noticed it. A new email alert. Attempted withdrawal denied. My blood chilled. George leaned over my shoulder. "What's that?" "It happened today," I whispered. "Someone tried accessing Daniel's investment account." "Let me guess," George said dryly. "Someone with expensive perfume and a talent for picking locks?" Before I could answer, another notification popped up. This one from my own email. "Urgent, documents attached." From Olivia. My pulse hammered. I clicked the message. It was long, emotional, accusatory, but buried halfway down the email, attached almost carelessly, was a PDF file. George squinted. "What's that?" I enlarged it. It was a scanned image, a loan application, with Daniel's name typed neatly at the top, and at the bottom, a signature. Daniel's signature. Except, it wasn't his. It was Olivia's. The lines were identical to her handwriting in Liam's school forms. George inhaled sharply. "That's forgery." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Olivia hadn't just panicked. She hadn't just overspent. She had committed fraud, and she had accidentally sent me the proof. George placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Margaret, I think your son knew exactly what he was afraid of." My throat tightened, and suddenly I understood. Everything was about to change, and none of it would stay quiet anymore. The next 48 hours moved like a storm, loud, fast, and impossible to ignore. Once Daniel's attorney saw the forged signature Olivia had accidentally sent me, everything shifted. He called me immediately. "Mrs. Harrison, this isn't just financial irresponsibility. This is fraud, and depending on the amount, it may qualify as a felony." My hands trembled around the phone. "What happens now?" "We file for emergency trust protection for Liam, notify the court about the forged documents, and freeze any vulnerable accounts." It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. But it was mine. And it was Daniel's. And Liam's. The hearing was scheduled quickly, too quickly for Olivia to compose the polished, unshakable version of herself she usually presented to the world. When I arrived at the courthouse, the hallway buzzed with low voices. The walls smelled faintly of old wood polish and anxiety. Lawyers hurried past holding towering stacks of folders. One man dropped a Mont Blanc pen and cursed under his breath as it rolled away. George met me in the lobby, adjusting the collar of his shirt awkwardly. "I'm here for moral support," he said, "and because I love a good courtroom, like free theater." Despite myself, I smiled. "I'm glad you're here." Then Olivia appeared. She looked small, not physically. Her posture was still straight, her makeup still flawless, but there was a crack in her expression, a tightness around the eyes that hadn't been there before. Her lawyer trailed behind her, expression tense. "Margaret," she said, her voice barely audible. "Olivia." Liam wasn't with her. Thank God. Her eyes flicked toward the folder in my hands. Is this really necessary? I didn't make any of this happen, I said softly. Your email did. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Before she could say more, the bailiff opened the courtroom door. Parties for Harrison case, please enter. The courtroom felt colder than the hallway. Polished wooden benches, a judge with tired eyes, the faint hum of the ceiling vent. I sat at one table with Daniel's attorney. Olivia sat across from me, twisting a tissue until it shredded between her fingers. The judge began, "We are here today to review concerns regarding financial irregularities and determine the appropriate temporary control of minor child Liam Harrison's trust-eligible assets." Olivia's lawyer rose first, presenting her as a struggling widow dealing with emotional hardship. He spoke about grief, bills, stress. Then Daniel's attorney stood. He placed the forged loan application on the projector screen without dramatics, just quiet, devastating clarity. Your Honor, this is a loan document filed shortly before Mr. Harrison's death. The signature is not his, it belongs to Mrs. Olivia Harrison. Olivia's face drained of color. Her lawyer sputtered. This could be perhaps an auto-generated. It isn't, Daniel's attorney said calmly. We have handwriting samples, and the bank has already verified the discrepancy. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Harrison, do you dispute that this is your signature? Olivia's voice cracked. I didn't mean to. I was desperate. Daniel wasn't helping, he was distant. Do you dispute the signature? The judge repeated. Tears filled her eyes. No, she whispered. I did it. The room fell silent. Even the air stopped moving. The judge nodded grimly. Given this admission, and the risk of further financial misconduct, temporary control of all trust-related assets is granted solely to Mrs. Margaret Harrison, effective immediately. Mrs. Olivia Harrison's access is suspended pending a full investigation. Olivia broke, right there, in the middle of the courtroom. She collapsed into her chair, face buried in her hands, sobbing in a way that wasn't calculated or manipulative, but raw, broken, terrifyingly honest. For a moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt heartbroken. Daniel had loved her once. Liam loved her still. The judge added gently, Mrs. Harrison, you will retain physical custody of your son. We are not removing him from you, but your financial privileges are now restricted. Olivia nodded, small, defeated. When court adjourned, she approached me slowly, eyes red. I never meant to hurt Liam, she whispered. Or Daniel, or you. I believed her, and yet, the damage was done. George stepped beside me like a quiet shield. Olivia looked at him, then back at me. Margaret, please don't hate me, I inhaled shakily. I don't hate you, I said. But I won't let anything destroy what Daniel tried to protect. Not again. Her tears spilled over. And for the first time since his death, I felt Daniel's presence, not as grief, but as clarity. His message had finally come into the light. The days after the hearing felt strangely quiet, as if the whole house had exhaled after months of holding its breath. For the first time since Daniel's death, I wasn't living in constant fear of what Olivia might take or what she might destroy. The trust was protected. Liam's future was safe. And the truth, painful as it was, had been acknowledged in a courtroom full of strangers. But winning didn't feel like victory. Not when I saw the hollow look in Olivia's eyes as she left that day. A week later, she came to my house alone. No folder, no fake smile, no sharpness behind her eyes. Just Olivia, small, shaking, clutching her car keys like they were the only thing keeping her upright. Can I come in? She whispered. I nodded. She stepped inside and immediately broke into tears. Not loud ones. Quiet, exhausted ones that came from someone who had finally run out of ways to pretend. I've been going to therapy, she said, wiping her cheeks. Court-ordered, and voluntary. That's good, I said softly. You were right about everything, she whispered. Daniel didn't feel safe, and I didn't help him feel safe. I was so afraid of losing him that I pushed him away, and then I made stupid choices, terrible ones. She looked up at me, eyes swollen. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I'm trying to be better, for Liam. Her honesty hit harder than any threat or accusation ever had. Olivia, I said gently, I never wanted to take your life away. I only wanted to protect him. I know, she whispered, and I'm grateful, even if it hurts. She took a shaky breath. Please don't let Liam think I'm a monster. I touched her hand, lightly, cautiously. You're his mother, and he loves you, that won't change. She cried harder. When she finally left, I didn't feel anger. I felt something closer to relief. And maybe the beginning of forgiveness. Life became softer after that. Liam spent weekends with me, turning my living room into a battlefield of Legos and snack wrappers. George became a fixture around the house, fixing squeaky doors, carrying heavy boxes, insisting he wasn't hovering, just preventing me from injuring myself with my own stubbornness. We developed a quiet rhythm. Some evenings, we sat on the porch drinking tea while Liam played with the neighbor's dog. Other nights, George cooked under the delusion he was a master chef until I gently rescued his burnt attempt at lasagna. "You know," he said once, stirring sauce with too much confidence, "if we keep having dinner together this often, the neighbors will start talking." I smirked. "Let them. It'll give them a break from gossiping about their HOA board." He laughed, a warm, full laugh that filled the kitchen, and something shifted inside me. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. For the first time in a long while, the world didn't feel like a place I was surviving. It felt like a place I was living. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Liam handed me a drawing. Crayon lines, messy but earnest. It was me, him, and Daniel, standing under a big sun. And next to us, slightly taller, was a man with white hair holding a mug of coffee. "That's George," Liam announced proudly. "Because he's part of our family now." I looked at the drawing, my throat tightening. Olivia, standing nearby, smiled faintly. Not jealous, not tense, just grateful. "We really are healing, aren't we?" she whispered. "Yes," I said softly, "we are." That afternoon, George and I took a walk through the neighborhood. The breeze was cool, the sky calm. At one point, he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. And for the first time since losing my son, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like something Daniel would have wanted. Liam safe, his mother finding her way back to herself, and me, finally allowing myself to love again. Not young love, not perfect love, but real, steady, late-in-life love. The kind that grows quietly, the kind that stays. Spring arrived softly that year, as if the world decided to give us a gentler kind of beginning. One early Saturday morning, I found myself sitting on the porch with a warm Starbucks cup in my hands, watching the sunlight spill over the neighborhood like melted gold. The air smelled faintly of jasmine, and the hum of sprinklers down the street blended with the distant laughter of kids riding bicycles. Liam was inside, curled up on the couch with my Kindle, reading a children's book he'd chosen all by himself. Watching him like that, peaceful, safe, felt like witnessing a small miracle. Olivia had been doing better too. Slowly, steadily. Therapy, honest conversations, practical steps. Our relationship would never go back to what it was, but maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe it was enough that we were learning to stand beside each other without fear. I heard footsteps behind me. George, he walked out carrying 2 plates, scrambled eggs that were slightly overcooked and toast that was slightly too dark. "I call this rustic breakfast," he said proudly. I laughed. "It's burnt, George." He grinned. "Ah, but with personality." He sat beside me, close enough for our shoulders to touch. Neither of us moved away. We ate together in quiet comfort, the way people do when companionship has grown from something tender and steady rather than rushed. After we finished, George reached for my hand, not tentative but warm, familiar. "You know," he said softly, "you're allowed to be happy, even now, even after everything." I squeezed his hand back. "I'm learning." We sat there for a long moment, listening to birdsong, watching sunlight drift through the leaves. It felt like a new chapter, not replacing what came before, but honoring it. Inside the house, Liam giggled at something on the Kindle. Down the street, neighbors waved as they passed. Beside me, George breathed steadily, like an anchor. For the first time since losing Daniel, I felt it. A quiet, honest sunrise inside my chest. Life hadn't ended. It had simply changed shape, and somehow, beautifully, gently, I had changed with it.